Is it that?
Yes.
Up there, right? Okay. Let's go ahead and bring the meeting of Templeton Community Services District Board of Directors to order, please. This is Tuesday, January 16th, and meeting starting at 7 o'clock. Roll call, please.
Director Sardonish.
Here.
Cardini is absent. Logan.
Here.
Pearson. Here. And Peterson.
Here. Okay. Let's please stand for pledge of allegiance. Director Logan, would you please lead us? That pledge.
Sorry, I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Okay, we put out of closed session last time on December 19th, 2023. We had a closed session meeting after our regular meeting, and there are no reportable actions from that meeting. Order of business, any board members want to change any of Ryan's business? Okay. Next item, special reports. We have our sheriff and CHP here as well. Commander Manueli for sheriff, please.
Good evening, Michael Manuel, Commander, Sheriff's North Station. Pleasure to be here and Happy New Year to everybody. I have your report for December 2023. The station received 1,301 calls for service compared to last year, 2,060. That's a 37% drop in calls for service year over year. Looking at those calls for service, Templeton accounted for 267 compared to last year. 378, that's a drop of about 29%, two significant drops there. Compared to San Miguel, they had 189 calls for service and saw a 28% increase in their calls for service. From those calls for service, we generated 223 reports. Compared to last year, there were 247, a drop of about 10% for the station. Looking at Templeton specifically, they accounted for 57 reports compared to last year, 84, a drop of about 32. In comparison, San Miguel had 30 reports. Breaking those calls for service down into individual areas, assault and battery, we had 3 calls for service generating 4 reports. A family member was under the influence and hit and bit a victim. And then we had 1 domestic violence call which generated 2 reports. Disturbance calls, there were 14 disturbance generating 3 reports. We had threats were made to shoot a family member. We had a 16-year-old juvenile was upset with their parents, would not let them smoke marijuana before school in the morning. And then we had a subject on a horse who was in somebody's driveway. Burglary, there were 2 calls for service generating 2 reports. We had items stolen from a garage that was normally left open. And then we had someone forced entry into a trailer on the property and stole items from within. 2 theft called for service, both generated reports. We had packages from Amazon that were not delivered. And then we had a backpack and its contents were stolen from an unlocked vehicle. 2 calls for service generated by vandalism. None of those resulted in a report. We had trespassing, 3 calls for service, 2 reports. Deputy was dispatched to a property dispute that was determined to be a civil matter. And then we had an ex-husband of a family member showed up at the property without permission. And we went and took care of that. 0 phone scams. We had 16 calls for service related to suspicious circumstances and generated 2 reports. A wallet and a set of keys were believed to be taken from a homeowner's house while that person was in the hospital. And that's my report. It's good to see a drop in those numbers and not have a lot to report on.
Oh, thank you. And any questions from board members? No. Any questions from public on the report? No. Wonderful. Well, thank you again. Thanks for coming. Appreciate it. And from CHP, we have Lieutenant Sloat.
Good evening, sir. Board. Dennis Joe with Templeton CHP, good to be with you. This is our report for freeway and roads in and around Templeton area for the month of December 2023. The Templeton CHP office investigated 15 crashes in and around the Templeton area. That's down from 19 the prior year. 8 of those up on the freeway, 7 on county roads. Of those, 12 were property damage, 5 on the highway, 7 on county roads, 3 involved injury, all on the highway. There were 2 collisions involving a DUI driver. A total of 5, 2 on the freeway, 3 on county roads. That's up 1 from the prior year. And we're happy to report there were no fatal collisions for the month in and around the Templeton area. For the entirety of our jurisdiction, we had no fatal collisions for the month of December, which is down 2 from the prior year. So we appreciate everyone's efforts to avoid distracted and impaired driving. We had a good year. We're hoping that that will continue in 2024. And with your help, it will. We had 929 enforcement actions throughout our jurisdiction for the period, 75 of those in and around the Templeton area, 65 on the freeway, 10 on county roads, and issued 47 citations, 43 on the freeway, 4 on county roads. That's up from 41 the prior year. We wrote 26 citations for speed above the posted speed limit, 25 on the freeway and 1 on county roads. That's up 1 from the prior year, and wrote no 100-mile-an-hour plus violations for the period, either on freeway or county roads. There were 7 DUI arrests in and around the Templeton area, 3 on the highway, 4 on county roads, 34 throughout our jurisdiction in the period of December. That's up 4 from the prior year, which was up 10 from the year before that. For your information, we provided 164 motorist services throughout the jurisdiction. And that's our report.
Wonderful, thank you. Any questions? Any questions from the public? Well, thank you so much for the report. Thank you both you guys for working hard during the holidays and to keep us safe, so thank you. Okay. Now it's time for public comment. Members of the public may address the board on any items of interest within the subject matter jurisdiction of the board, but not on the agenda today. Are there any public members, whether on Zoom or here, that want to make any public comments? No? Okay, all right. Let's go ahead and move on to consent agenda. We have 2 items on the consent agenda. Is the minutes from December 19th of 23 and the treasurer's report for November of 23. Any board members want to remove any of the items to discuss? No. Okay, otherwise might I have a motion?
Public comment?
Sure. Any public comment on the 2 items for the consent agenda? Okay, thank you.
I'll make a motion that the board approve the minutes of the December 19th, 2023 board meeting and the treasurer's report for November 2023.
Roll call, please.
Directors Logan,
Aye.
Pearson. Aye. Giardini is absent. Peterson
Yes.
and Fardonish.
Wonderful, so the consent agenda is perfect. Now we're to next item is the item of business. This is an item we need to take action on. It's a waste management franchise agreement. We will consider triggering the 10-year non-renewal notice to waste management under the franchise agreement. General Manager, bro?
Yes, thank you much. So we do have some representation here from Waste Management, and if there are questions after I introduce this item for them, we've got some folks available to answer those questions. As you know, the district we activated our solid waste power back in 2001, and shortly thereafter, Mid-State Solid Waste came about and was the hauler. In 2012, the district renegotiated the contract or the franchise agreement with Mid-State Solid Waste. That is the agreement that's attached to your staff report. And then in 2022, as a result of SB 1383, an amendment, pretty significant amendment to that agreement was approved by both us and Mid-State. And then earlier this year, the Mid-State Solid Waste franchise at Mid-State's request was assigned to Waste Management. And that was effective November 1st. Your board took action on that in early October. But the agreement itself, the bulk of it's been in place now for about 11 and a half years. With this amendment, just a couple years ago. When Midstate when Midstate assigned the franchise to Waste Management and to approve that, Waste Management is now tied to this same agreement. This agreement includes a provision that's a little unique, maybe not totally unique, but whereby the agreement automatically extends for a year each year. It was a 10-year agreement, and each year that goes by, it automatically extends. That provision is described on page 12 in section number 3. So if no action is taken by either party with Waste Management now or the district, it's essentially an evergreen agreement. If you were to utilize the terms of that provision to stop the agreement or press pause essentially, or stop the automatic renewals, the agreement rate remains in effect for 10 years. So it was a 10-year agreement to begin with, and then every year that's gone by added another year to the agreement. This has been a source of, I think, some question or debate amongst some community members and some board members ever since the agreement was first reached with Midstate. I did attempt on a couple of occasions to talk to Midstate about whether or not they'd be receptive to altering those terms and what would it take to alter the terms of the agreement. And essentially Midstate stated that they weren't necessarily receptive to that. And they found that length of agreement, this sort of automatic renewing, provided them with a lot of stability and assisted them in achieving more advantageous financing terms on equipment, those sorts of things, because it was predictable. Over the years, various board members have commented on this, although this issue or the formal consideration of triggering this non-renewal clause has not been taken up since the agreement was reached. It was discussed briefly at a committee meeting or two, and it was also mentioned by board members during the assignment of the franchise agreement in October. It's on tonight's agenda because the agreement's got some kind of it's not unclear, but the agreement has pretty specific language that says not only would we have to issue a notice to avoid the automatic extension, but that notice is actually due 120 days before July 1st. So effectively like March 2nd. So it's really like 10 years and 4 months notice. So if no action is taken by either the district or Waste Management prior to March 2nd, if my calendar counting is correct, then the agreement will be valid through 2035, through June 30th, 2035. If either party takes action to trigger that notice to terminate the automatic renewal, for example, if the district were to do so now or anytime prior to March 2nd, then the agreement would go through June 30th, 2034. So still about 10 and a half years. So that's why it's on tonight's agenda, or to be considered before that deadline passes and another year gets added on to the agreement. It's really it's one of those things that's difficult to describe what the pros and cons of this are. I think it's an unusual provision. And it made more sense when we were dealing with a very small operator that did have unique requirements about buying expensive pieces of equipment or expensive additions to a facility when only 2 fairly small franchise areas were part of their service. It's arguably not as important with a company the size of Waste Management, who has other places they can utilize the equipment if something were to occur here. So would this term have been reached if we were working with Waste Management right from the very beginning? I don't know. But it's arguably less of a factor with Waste Management. At least I would argue that's less of a factor with Waste Management than it was with Midstate Solid Waste. primary value that you get with the provision of the way that it's written is rates are locked in with a few exceptions. And those exceptions are landfill tipping fees. If they go up, they're entitled to a rate adjustment. CPI, which as you're aware of, can occur, CPI can trigger a rate adjustment, but otherwise, and then if there are changes to legislation or regulatory requirements, those can be factored into the rates. But otherwise, Waste Management cannot just simply propose, hey, I know the CPI was 3% this year, but we need to raise rates 12% because X, Y, and Z. That's not permissible under the agreement. So what that term provides is rate stability for our customers, our collective customers. And that would last, it's lasted these 11, 12 years so far, and it would last going into the future. And if you were to trigger this non-automatic renewal clause, then after 2034, that would go away. And if you didn't end up with a new agreement with Waste Management in about 8 or 9 years, we'd be soliciting, haulers like Waste Management and others to provide bids for this kind of service. You'd likely select one of those, and you won't know until then whether or not that's a rate or cost would be higher or lower for our customers going forward. So there is risk that if you trigger this provision and time goes on, 9 or 10 years goes by, and we solicit bids for service, that the rates could actually be higher afterwards. They could be lower. So we just don't know. The other issue is if you take action like this, obviously the agreement is still in effect for nearly 10 and a half more years. We could negotiate revisions to the franchise agreement, amendments, or maybe even more substantial to that with Waste Management. Both parties would have to agree to those. There may be regulatory requirements coming down the line that would necessitate a amendment. Or we could do so voluntarily if both parties agreed, and that might result in different terms for your consideration. So triggering the non-automatic renewal does not mean that Waste Management will not be our provider after July 1st, 2034, but they would not be obligated to be our provider after that date. So I'm happy to answer any questions, and again, we've got folks from Waste Management here. You have essentially 6 weeks or so to make a decision in time for the current rolling clock.
Thank you. Any questions for the general manager before I open it up to the public?
Can you speak to what other waste haulers might be in place of Waste Management?
Well, locally in this county, we have another large company called Waste Connections that operates under names of various, like San Luis Obispo Garbage, but it's really a Waste Connections company. They provide service to a number of jurisdictions. We have Paso Robles Waste that provides waste services in Paso Robles, San Miguel Waste in San Miguel and Heritage Ranch, for example. And then in some areas, this county not being one of them, but in many other areas, the municipality provides that service, the hauling service.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
So what is the benefit, I guess, to the district to forego this provision? Just the flexibility of choosing at 10 years, or what, I guess?
Yeah, I mean, well, it would decouple you from the agreement, right? So you'd have 10 years to perhaps end up with something better. You won't, I'll be the first to say, I don't know that as far as rates go in particular, I don't know that whatever decision you make, and I think we won't know for 9 or more years whether or not this was a good decision as far as rates are concerned for our customers. But if you take no action, that pattern sort of just continues, or that down the line with the 10-year rolling clock, unless the parties agree to change it at some point going forward.
But you mentioned also that there's a likelihood of we're gonna have to do some amendments to it regarding current legislation, so are we revisiting this agreement?
But both parties would have to agree. So for example, when we did so under the 1383 amendment, again, at that time, I requested of Midstate, would they consider during this kind of reopening of the agreement, altering this provision, and they declined. Because, you know, they don't have to, they wouldn't have to agree. I mean, if they don't agree, then the provision.
Well, I understand why Waste Management or Midstate would not want to change that, because for financing purposes, it's advantageous for them. I'm not sure, I guess the big question is the risk of having a contract where we're locked in for 10 years at a time is, are we getting the best rates? Is there a competitor out there that offers better rates? And I think that's kind of the question. Because otherwise, you know, we do have some, I guess, protection of having rate increases when a contract comes up for renewal that are non-regulatory in nature, if we were to change this. So, you know, it's kind of like a double-edged sword, you know, do we keep it as is and kind of keep our rates stabilized? Or do we shorten it, and then be able to look at other competitors in the area? But I'm not sure how much competition there is to say, well, who can offer the best rates? Or did we get the best rates? But also every time it comes up for renewal, there is an opportunity to increase those rates.
It's one of those things that nobody would give us a bid today because the bids, we couldn't do anything with it for 10 years. So the circumstances will change.
Yeah,
You know,
it's too far out.
That's way too far out to really know. So, yeah, there's a little bit of a risk, if you ultimately decide to trigger the non-renewal clause 9 years from now, probably won't be all of us up here, but you know, the group that's here might say, man, we should have kept it the way it was. The rates would be lower, or thank goodness we triggered this because now look, we're able to get, more competitive rates or lower rates for our customers. But we really just won't know that until that time comes.
The time that this agreement was, we were looking into kind of subletting, was that explored, the competitors and everything, or is that just
In 2012,
just last year, 2022, when this agreement was?
it was just amended to incorporate all the 1383 requirements. It was not up for renewal. I mean, it was.
No, not up for renewal, but it was being sold, right, from,
Oh, no, that was it was being sold from Midstate to Waste Management in 2023.
but we wouldn't have to accept that sub agreement. So were other competitors explored at that time?
So there was a assignment provision in the agreement that we followed when you approved the assignment to Waste Management. And that we did not look at other options because the request to assign wasn't a trigger for terminating the agreement.
But terminating the agreement itself or not abiding by the terms of the agreement was council.
Yes, I mean, there's a very specific provision for it that allowed the assignment. I mean, the assignment provision.
16.
No, I understand that part, but we don't have to allow the assignment. Essentially, Midstate would be obligated to this.
So, one of the provisions of the assignment is if the franchise, and again, this has already taken place, but if the franchisee, Midstate, requests the district's consideration of and consent to an assignment, the district may deny or approve such a request at its discretion. So you're right, you didn't have to do so, but the district shall not unreasonably withhold consent. And we provided consent to permit this.
Right, so at that time, were other options explored as we were considering whether or not we were gonna provide legal?
No,
Because we couldn't, right? Because they still would have been 10 years
I
out.
mean, you could have denied the assignment.
Yeah.
And then there would have
Yeah.
been some
Still would have
termination
been
provision.
10 years out.
When you could still renegotiate and take them out of terms, and there have been negotiations with council, so there are other options, but I was just asking if those were explored at that time.
Yeah, we're
If
not.
we're talking about it today.
If there are no other questions from board, I'm gonna go ahead and open it up to public. And obviously we have staff from the waste management. I'm sure they have some comments to make, and as well as any other public that wants to make a comment on that. So I'm gonna go ahead and open it up to public. So if anybody wants to make a comment, please.
Be happy to speak. Jeff and I have actually discussed this a few times. For all the same risks and opportunities that exist for the district, it's the same risks and opportunities on our side as the provider. I will say that the idea of an evergreen clause, like, you know, kind of the Ron Popeil, set it and forget it approach to terms is it's one of those things that you don't see that very often anymore for the very reasons that were brought up, and the fact that it's hard to get many years down the road without having to touch the agreement due to regulatory changes. Just in the last 10 years, so in 2012, we had mandatory commercial recycling. In 2016, we had mandatory commercial organics recycling. 2020, we obviously had 1383 and the short-lived Climate Pollutants Act. So it's one of those things that the regulations keep coming and they keep necessitating changes to the agreement, which means that obviously the district in mid-state had sat down. I expect that we're going to sit down and go through those same things, knowing that the next pieces of legislation that are in the regulatory writing phase right now is the extended producer responsibility requirements, which is going to necessitate the diversion of additional materials out of the waste stream. Not sure exactly what that looks like in terms of the onus on the district or as your provider, and what that will look like. Those regulations are being written, but we know that they're going to have to be integrated into the franchise. Following that, there is the state is moving towards electrification of municipal fleets, including those of your service provider. So the district will be having to update all of its vehicles to zero emissions. We as your provider will be doing the same. Obviously, that's going to have to get accounted for, you know, within the agreement. So as much as it would be great to be able to say, we've got this agreement, you know, it works, and, you know, we'll be able to just, you know, let it go on forever. I know that's not a realistic viewpoint, and in this case, the change that's being considered tonight, you know, really is kind of par for the course in terms of, if nothing else, I guess it gives the district some finality in terms of knowing that there will be this point in time in the future in which a change can be made if one is needed. You know, otherwise, I don't know that you could really leave the agreement that we have in place today, you know, in place for perpetuity. So again, we're kind of agnostic on it. I'm hoping that we get to the 11 years from now and we still have the pleasure and the opportunity to service the district. But I know that ultimately you as the leaders of the community, you know, providing good governance for the residents and businesses you represent, that, you know, this is something you definitely have taken into consideration. And again, can't see the future, but I fully understand where it would come up and why it would be necessitated.
Any other comments? Any questions? You guys have any questions? All right, well, thank you. We're gonna go ahead and close the public part of it and come back to the board for discussion. So what do you guys, your thoughts, comments?
I would like to ask the general manager what his feeling is on the contract.
You know, I think it was an agreement that, at least on the district side, there was some regret about this provision. I've heard that from community members, prior board members who served when the agreement was written, said that was what their one regret was agreeing to this term. I don't know what the outcome will be 10 years from now, because it's just so far down the road. You know, if you take action now, might it be something that 10 years from now, somebody regrets us doing, as I mentioned? But I do think it opens the door for a number of other reasons that gives you some flexibility. At least you know 10 years from now, you'll be able to make some changes. And those changes don't need to be necessarily who the service provider is, but how the service is provided. So it puts the onus, it gives the district some more control about how those services are provided. I will say it's gonna be a big task 9 years from now. If Waste Management in the district don't update the agreement materially over the next 9 years, it will be a big undertaking to consider service providers 9 and a half years from now. So, it probably won't be most of us there, and so someone might be calling me down the road, and what the hell were you thinking? I could have avoided all this work. But what this agreement has is unusual. Nobody else has, I'm not aware of a similar agreement. Usually there are fixed terms that are negotiated between the hauler at the time. Oftentimes the same hauler, gets a renewal, it's essentially a contract renewal and a new agreement's drafted. And in some cases, the county or city or special district would go out to bid and get, awarded to somebody else. For example, I can speak to Atascadero, our neighbor to the south. I think it was just a couple of years ago, maybe it's been longer than that, I don't really remember. The agreement was with Waste Management. It was set to lapse. The city chose not to seek bids, but entered into a new agreement with Waste Management. So you're gonna have options.
Thanks. I was in the audience when this was originally passed, like 12 years ago. I've been on the board now 10. And in my opinion, from everyone I'm talking to, the only reason we put it in there was because of Brad. And Brad's done a lot for this community. We were sorry to see him leave. I've always said I wouldn't give a deal like this to my mother. I mean, 10 years is a long time. I mean, and I'm looking at it from the point of view, if we're not happy with the service, we're stuck for 10 years, and so, to me, the rates are gonna be what they are with all of the, as the gentleman over here said, the state's gonna come down with these wonderful, ridiculous, things that they have to do, that it's gonna cost us money. So I am definitely in favor of the motion.
I too would be in favor of making some changes, because I've never seen an agreement that has this kind of 10-year lock-in. And so I think that there is some risk that perhaps we could end up with different rates, but I think that's something that needs to be negotiated. So I would be in favor of a shorter term on the contract at some point in time. So yeah, I would be in favor of making this change.
Yeah, for me, it's just 10 years is such a long time. And it's like, I mean, even right now, we're afraid to make any decisions, or we can't make any decisions because it's 10 years down the road. If it's 3 years, 5 years, you could see what's gonna happen, and there's gonna be so many regulations and so many changes that who knows, what we need to be looking at. So it's just the fact that it's 10 years, it's just such a long time. And, before, Brad was in place and we knew the service, local right there, providing, wonderful service. So, and, nothing against Waste Management. It's just, we're all new to this right now, the relationship is new, and, we want to make sure, like, 2 or 3 years, if something's going on, we can't, we have to wait another 10 and a half years. I think that's just.
Well, I think this was also put in place before any of us were involved.
Yeah.
So that's the other issue. I think this is what we all received, and I agree that Brad was a smaller business operator. And it may have been advantageous for him for financing.
Yeah.
But I think we need to look at this a little differently.
Yeah, and I think I've asked you before, Waste Management doesn't have any deal like this with other jurisdiction, correct?
We have had them in the past, that in the 10 years that I've been with the company, that most of them, due to all the things we've discussed here tonight, have phased that out. That it's just, it's not realistic that you could start with an agreement and have it go on in perpetuity any longer. That things come up, things change. And, you know, to some extent that may mean that you run the risk, but you also have the opportunity. And again, we're fine with it.
That's it. Pearson, any comments?
I'm just kind of taking it all in, but only additional that.
Okay, all right, okay. So any other comments, question? If not, I'll entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion that the board approve or direct staff to issue a notice of non-renewal to Waste Management to avoid the automatic extension of the term of the agreement beyond June 30th, 2034.
I'll second.
Second. Roll call, please.
Directors Logan,
Aye.
Peterson,
Yes.
Giardini is absent, Pearson,
Aye.
and Fardonish.
Aye. Passes.
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you, guys. I sincerely hope that we could sit down and have a productive conversation and come to agreement and, you know, continue a great service. So we appreciate that. This isn't anything against Waste Management.
No, and like I said, that it's been a pleasure, working with Jeff and with Carrie and again, I know that this is certainly not the end of the conversation on the agreement, so I'm hoping that we'll overcome the challenges that are gonna be before us and work together to make sure that we're ultimately taking care of the residents and the businesses here in Templeton.
All right. Well, thank you very much, you guys, for coming. Appreciate it. Okay. Next item is appointment of residents to internal standing committees. So we will review application from members of the public who wish to serve on internal committees and make appointments for the 2024 calendar year. All right.
Yeah, sure. So as you know, beginning about a year ago, you began appointing residents to serve on your standing committees, and that's helped bring in some new thoughts and more participation on those committees. This fall, due to just maybe revisiting that concept, we tweaked that system a little bit. And your objective or your guidelines now say, your board bylaws now say that each committee can have one resident with additional residents serving potentially as alternates to that one resident. And that was intended to kind of make setting meetings a little bit easier. This last November, we issued a press release letting residents know that there's this opportunity to serve on the committees. And we also notified all of our existing committee members of the opportunity to serve. We received applications for service from 4 people. I'll set Measure A Oversight Committee aside for just a second, because that's a little different animal. The four people are listed there: Keith Agson, Eric Marlowe, who's here in attendance, Eric Mortensen, who's attending via Zoom, applied to serve on your standing committees. And you could see the little on the staff report what committees each of them wishes or was willing to serve on. Our recommendation, in order to put one person on each committee, and based on the residents' interest and willingness to serve, is to appoint Eric Marlowe, again, who's here, and you're welcome to speak with him, or if he has any comments, on the Facilities Committee and on Parks, Recreation, and the Refuse Committee. So he'd be the one resident on both of those committees. Eric Mortensen to the Admin and Finance Committee, and he's been serving on that committee for the past year. And Keith Agson to the Fire and Emergency Management Committee. And Keith has some connections, ties to the district from his time as our interim fire chief here, but that's been a few years ago. And then as far as Measure A is concerned, it's a different kind of Measure A oversight, it's a different little different appointment process. Those are 2-year terms. The board appointed 2 people earlier in 2023. And we had 2, the first 2 people to serve, their terms were up. Of those 2 persons, Dan Mosinich has requested to be reappointed. And so our recommendation is to reappoint him, but not make that appointment effective only after the Measure A Oversight Committee's work has concluded for the 2022-23 fiscal year. They're preparing the annual report now, and so the reappointment would not take place or would not be effective until that has concluded, because it's already on the committee. That's our recommendation. Again, you've got a couple of folks who are participating tonight, and thank them for attending.
Awesome. Any questions for general manager on this item? No.
I do have a question. I'm in favor of the people and the way it's presented. I do have a question though, and I think you're Eric Marlowe. Do you live in Paso or you live here?
I live in Templeton. I live right down the street.
Does Paso not have a rule that you have to be living in Paso to be on a planning commission?
Nope, just city council and mayor. You can be on the planning commission and not be a resident.
Really? That's kind of unusual. Okay, that was my only question and I was curious.
Yep,
I thought
asked the
maybe you might have moved or. Yeah.
Nope, but I'm involved with a lot of different people over there in the community and threw my hat in the ring and they liked me, so we're doing it and it's a 3-year appointment and I'm happy to do it. Eventually I might move over there, throw my hat in the ring for city council, but right now I live here, so.
Okay, thank you.
And that was gonna be my question. Thank you. So I'm gonna open it up to public. Eric, Mr. Muller, do you have any comments?
No, I'm just a little background. I kind of explained it, but a 10-year builder in government public works contracts. I'm building Guadalupe Bay Junior High School, doing a renovation of Montecito. Part of the planning commission. I've been here in Templeton a couple of years. I love the town and, I'm doing different things to try to use my skills to benefit the community in different ways. And so I thought I'd come and show up and see what I could do to help you guys. I believe this is Carrie. We communicated. It's not a huge time commitment. I'm a pretty busy guy, but I think based on the number of meetings you've had over the years, 2 of them I can manage pretty accordingly. So yeah, I appreciate the opportunity and look forward to seeing if I can help you guys out with some stuff. So.
Okay, thank you. I don't foresee any problems with conflicts, interests or anything like that between Paso and here, but I guess we'll just keep that in.
Yeah, so I did confirm that it's not an issue of the incompatibility of offices between the serving on the City of Paso Robles Planning Commission and being appointed here. We'll keep that in mind. Paso Robles doesn't have any jurisdiction over anything that would happen in Templeton, at least from the perspective of needing to get an item before the planning commission, but I'll keep that in mind. We do have some unique arrangement, historical arrangements with the City of Paso Robles, but I don't foresee it being a problem.
Well, thank you for volunteering, appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then we have Mr. Eric Mortensen online too, do you have any comments to make?
I don't, but I could tell you that I have previously worked with Kate Gagson when I worked in the city of San Luis Obispo, which I'm currently employed with, and he was a fire chief down there, and I would highly recommend that individual.
Awesome. Well, I know you've been serving on the finance committee, and I hope you enjoyed it, and we're looking forward to having you serve for another year.
Thank you very much.
Okay, no other public comment? Okay, I'll close it, bring it back to board. If no more comments, I'll entertain the motion.
I'll make a motion that the board appoint residents Keith Axon to the Fire and Emergency Management Committee, Eric Marlowe to the Facilities Committee and Parks and Refuge Committee, Eric Motzitz to the Administration and Finance Committee for 2024, and Dan Mochinich for the Measure A Oversight Committee for 2 years effective after the fiscal year 2022-23 report is presented to the board.
Second.
Second, okay. Second, roll call please.
Directors Logan,
Aye.
Peterson,
Yes.
Giardini is absent, Pearson. Aye. And Fardonish.
Aye. Thank you. It's passed. Perfect, appreciate it. All right, next item is appointment of board members to the committee, and this is information also. There is did you wanna-
No, go for it.
Okay, so you guys see on the agenda that there is a list of committees that each director has been assigned to. I think I need to read this out loud.
Maybe it makes it clearer for
Yeah.
the record.
Okay, so for the internal committees that we have for administration and finance is Director Logan and me, Director Fardanish. Facilities is Director Giardini Peterson. For fire and emergency management is me and Director Peterson. For parks, recreation and refuse is Director Giardini and Pearson. For the external committees is for Nacimiento Commission, Director Peterson. As an alternate is Director Giardini. For Templeton Area Advisory Group, Director Logan. And alternate is Director Giardini. For Templeton Rec Foundation is Director Pearson. And alternate is Director Peterson. Water Resources Advisory Committee is Director Logan, and I be the alternate. And GSA Executive Committee is me, and alternate is Director Peterson. So this is how it's said, and just the information, for your information, Director Giardini said that she's available for tag meetings, so if you, I know it's late, so if you wanna take a break, she'd be, just let her know, she'd be more than happy to participate. Perfect. All right, you're welcome. Any questions on those comments? Everything good? No. Okay, all right, so that item is closed, right?
Yep.
Okay, perfect, thank you. So general manager's report.
I do have a number of items to update you on. So one, over the last couple of weeks, you might have read or seen news stories about the federal budget. There was an announcement that there was a deal reached between senior House leadership and senior Senate leadership about what the spending totals would be for the current federal fiscal year. As you know, it's been started now, 4 months ago, and we don't have a approved budget. I did reach out to, after that news hit, I did reach out to our contact with Congressman Panetta's office and asked how that might affect that sort of deal would affect the community project funding that they've supported on our behalf. And there's just no information out there that these about whether or not those are going to be included. This weekend, you might have heard that there's now some talks to pass another continuing resolution. The non-defense spending, I think, is set to expire Thursday or Friday, the 19th of January. And it doesn't look like the deal that was reached a week and a half ago is going to actually be approved or take effect right away. And there'll very likely be another continuing resolution until what I read was sometime in March or maybe through March. So any news about the community projects funding that Panetta submitted on our behalf for a fire engine continues to be sort of delayed. It's not bad news, but it's not good news, and there is no certainty. So, more waiting on that front. I just want to let you know that we had an issue that occurred over the weekend with Los Robles Mobile Home Park. That's a mobile home park that is just outside the district boundaries on Theater Drive. They are not connected to they're not typically connected to the district's water system. They are on the district's
Sewer?
wastewater system. This mobile home park had their water system fail, and maybe not done properly, but we've allowed an emergency connection while they're making these repairs. I didn't hear it was scheduled to be, their system was scheduled to be back online today, just for a few days, and we're gonna estimate water usage and bill them for that water. But our water system goes right in front of their facility, and there is a fire hydrant that they tied into.
Was this also the mobile home park that was looking to replace their water system with either Templeton or Paso?
No, that system is connected to the Walnut Hills
Okay.
Mutual Water Company. There is a drive-through dinner fundraiser for Templeton Parks and Recreation. A flyer was passed out. That's on the 30th of January. I believe that's a Tuesday, 2 weeks from today. 2 weeks from today.
Kids need something.
I'll be out of the office and gone next week. I'll send you more information on that. I should be available. The Evers Park improvement plans have been resubmitted to the county by our consultant MIG. I'll keep you posted on that. Submit for permitting. Did learn yesterday that we had we've had a little bit of homeless issues on some of district property. We learned yesterday that we had a person camping out at the Creekside site. You know, that's that approximately 50-acre property that's east of, the other side of railroad tracks on Creekside Ranch Road. And we did make contact with the sheriff's office. The person though had decided to kind of move along before they responded, or before somebody got out there. So I don't think it's a long-term occupant, but we just want to alert you to that. Those are issues that we continue to kind of face. And that site is really, I mean, it's 50 acres and there's not much going on out. I mean, there's not a lot of visibility out there. And so it would not be hard for someone to spend, to be out there and not be seen a heck of a lot. And then you may recall several months ago, the board approved a budget amendment to remove most of the trees that are on the western boundary of Evers Park. That work started yesterday. Cool. So it should be done. It'll be done this week. At least the tree removal portion of that project. Those are the items there.
Oh, okay, great, thank you.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Going back to the fire department, refresh my memory, you sent us an email recently that the way I read it was that we could no longer purchase or start the purchase agreement. But now, according to what I think I heard you say, and what's gonna be on a future agenda, is we're moving forward. So could you clarify that?
Yes. So our plan as of last fall was to process was to align the purchasing requirements for the fire engine, to have that done in parallel with an application with the USDA in anticipation of this federal funding through the community projects funding. And we had coordinated with the USDA on a method to do this. And then in December, the USDA kind of did a complete about face and said, stop the pursuit of the engine because it could invalidate the award of this federal funding if you have certain steps completed before the funding is ever approved. So we've ceased that. On this agenda, I've just calendared this forward with the hopes that we would get some announcement on the federal funding. But
So as of right now, we cannot proceed with
you can proceed, but you put your
self at risk of not
Yes.
getting.
Yes.
Okay. I'm sure that'll come up again on the agenda where we can discuss it more.
So I just have a question regarding the engineer. I think the last time we met, you had a candidate that you were reaching out to. Do we have an update on that?
We do. The candidate has accepted the offer and we're in the process of going through the pre-employment background.
Okay.
We do not have a start date. We've had some challenges getting the background completed.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, any other questions? Any questions from public? All right, well, thank you for your report, appreciate it. Committee reports, we have TAG from December 21st. Any questions on that? No? Okay, any public, any questions? No. Okay. All right, so activity update reports, we have finance. We have fire, and emergency, and we have utilities. Does board have any questions on that? All right, If not, I have a question for fire. So if you could explain the significance of the grant that was applied for and was not funded for $230,000 so if you don't mind going over that, exactly what that was for and what does that mean now?
Certainly, yeah, the $230,000 AFG grant that we applied for last year was for SCBA's, self-contained breathing apparatus. Our SCBA's are now getting to the point of 15 years old. We've rebuilt some of what are called the regulators and those things on them, and they continually break on us and then go in to get repaired. So they're reaching the end of their lifespan. Even with repairs, they're becoming unreliable. So that grant was kind of a last ditch effort to try and get all of those 15 or 16 packs replaced with additional bottles, because a lot of our bottles are also timing out with regards to hydrostatic testing. And so that was the $238,000 that we put in for. Did not get it through FEMA, and so we are looking at having to replace those within the next year to two.
So yeah, on here it says within the next year. So does that mean it's going to go on our budget for this coming budget?
I don't know. I mean,
We're going to apply again this year
Okay,
through AFG and FEMA, but again, it's going to be a year until we hear. Hopefully sooner, but that AFG grant is coming up, and so I'm gonna apply for it again. What happens with FEMA is they pick certain items that rise up on priority, and I'm hoping that SCBA's and breathing apparatus type thing rise up on the priority level a little bit, and we have a better chance on getting it.
and then if we don't get the grant, this money will come, which account will this come in?
it would need to come out of the operating fund.
Operating overall.
Yeah, it's not, these are replacement items,
Okay.
so not
Which we don't
eligible,
have.
not eligible to be used.
We don't have
Um,
230.
Yeah, we have a fund balance to cover it, it was just deplete the fund balance.
Yeah, it would take it down to.
About half, it would cut it about half. You wouldn't, if you used all that money today, you wouldn't be able to fulfill your reserve requirements in the fire. Today.
All right, okay. Well, thank you, appreciate it. Any questions on any of that? Okay. Great, director's report and or comments. If you guys have any brief reports on any meetings that you have attended on behalf of the district.
None here.
Just want to mention that Director Pearson and we have had 2 meetings with general managers for our ad hoc committee meeting to try to come up with some recommendations for fire department revenue. So we will be presenting that at the next meeting with some ideas, so that way we could discuss it and then go back and try to clarify something. Okay. So that's, and then I attended the GSA meeting in which we selected a consultant. It's actually the same consultant that we've been using. So and as far as budget, everything is within budget, everything is good. And the big thing is going to be that the state is going to respond to us hopefully by end of this month, so within another week or two, regarding our plan that we submitted for Atascadero Basin. So they're gonna come back with their comments, and then we will need to make, if we need to make any adjustments or anything like that, we will do that. So that's a pretty big thing. So like, Paso Robles got theirs a while ago because they were more urgent, so they state responded to them quicker. But us, because we're not, because Atascadero is not in a urgent need, we were kind of low priority. But that's gonna be pretty big to get that update. Okay. And I guess no other comments from public? Okay, good. That's it now. We'll adjourn the meeting. Thank you for coming. Appreciate it.